reporter at the Times Age. So welcome to you. Just a note about our facilities. We are on Zoom because we don't have the correct infrastructure in place at the moment to be able to connect and live stream directly. So that's why we're all sitting on Zoom, even though we're all physically present. So just, if I may, like to hand over to Ra to open the meeting, please. Amen. Thank you, Ra. So moving on to the agenda of page 1, conflicts of interest. Is there any conflicts of interest that members need to declare? Councillor Nelson. Thank you. Is there any others? Councillor Nixon.
Wairarapa Regional Irrigation Trust.
Okay, thank you. Any others? There's not. Move on to apologies. I think we are all here. Not too sure about Tito, so we'll wait to see if Tito may be late. Moving on to item number 3, late items for inclusion under section 46A7. We have received the supplementary report that's just been handed out. So that will be part of the decision-making item number 14. So, and I will allow time further into the deliberations for councillors to have time to read that report. So could I have somebody move, please, that be accepted as a late item? Moved by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Mailman. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Moving on now to items to be considered under section 48(1)A of Lagoina, minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held with the public excluded on the 1st of May. Could I have somebody move that we consider those minutes under public excluded? Thank you, Councillor Caffell, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. We can now move to page 101. This is the confirmation of the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on the 1st of May. So you would have read the minutes. Is there any corrections? There is none. So could I have somebody move, please, that they be accepted? Thank you, Councillor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Nixon. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? The motion is carried. Moving on now to item number 6, confirmation of minutes of the annual plan and speed review, limit review held on the 6th of May. And that also includes some of the presentations that were presented to us at those hearings. So could I have some, is there any questions of correction from those minutes? There appears none, so could I have somebody that we confirm those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Holmes, seconded Councillor Gear. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? The motion is carried. Moving on now to item number 7, and this is confirmation of the extraordinary meeting held on the 20th of May. Is there any questions of clarity on the minutes? Okay, moved by Councillor Caffell, seconded please. Councillor Johnson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? The motion is carried. Sorry, I'm just untangling myself here. I keep on getting caught up with some of the cords. That's all right. Okay, moving on now for decision, item number 8, page 121 on the agenda, the annual plan deliberations overview. So you've seen that, had the report and the agenda. Chief Exec, do you want to speak to this, or the Manager of Strategic Planning, just for an overview? Yeah.
So thank you, Your Worship. The first thing to really note about this overview report is that this was a bit of an historic time for this council, in terms of we had just adopted our consultation document, and we worked through it in February, adopted it on the 6th of March, and a week later we're due to commence consultation, and within a week of that we found ourselves in lockdown. So the world around us considerably changed between when the council put together its consultation document and all of its underlying assumptions, and then as a result of lockdown we weren't able to engage directly through face-to-face and events, which we had hoped to do over the consultation period. But that aside, we still managed to get over 320 submissions. And for those people that filled in some of the demographic information, it was pleasing, I guess, to note that over 65% of them were new submitters. So whether that's people had some time on their hands sitting at home, or that indeed we had some big issues that the community was particularly prompted to make submissions on. I'll leave that to yourselves to form a conclusion on that. We did our hearings online, so that was obviously something new, and well done to the community and yourselves and the staff for making such a massive change. And they did go really well, and that was great to be able to still, under all of those trying circumstances, give the public the opportunity to be heard in support of their submission. We didn't have a large number of submitters that did choose to be heard, but overall what the staff have done have taken all of the submissions and feedback and categorised those to aid you with your decision making. You'll have to excuse me because it's quite hard to stand and see my screen. So the first report is really a big overview of what actually happened in terms of the COVID impacts upon our community. Also a recommendation to yourselves that we put aside $200,000 as a bit of a ring-fence pool of money, because as everyone will be acutely aware, we don't actually know what the short to medium long-term impacts on our community will be, and there may be opportunities for us to support the community in ways that we haven't as yet imagined through the first couple of tranches of recovery packages that we've given. So all in all, this first paper is really a summary of what happened, where we got to, and a recommendation that we put aside some money in the annual plan that gives us the flexibility and agility to address the needs of our community as we go forward. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kath. I just also want to acknowledge Councillor Malman as Chair of Hearings Committee that took us through that hearings process by Zoom. And yes, it was an interesting process, but it was a good process. We managed to get through it, and people were able to be heard, and councillors were able to ask questions of those that submitted. So thank you, Councillor Malman. So any questions of Kath regarding the report? There is none. Is there, Councillor Holmes?
I was just wondering, you've done it as it is, are you proposing to do perhaps one every quarter, Kath, just to sort of keep an eye on the way the system's going, or some sort of an update to us? Because like obviously the hate to say it, but you know, the economic situation doesn't look good, and an update from you every quarter or so often would be quite easy to do it.
Through you, Your Worship,
we discussed different ways that we may be able to bring forward monthly and quarterly numbers and reporting. And we've put some effort into asking MSD for more regular updates. There's a quarterly, and we probably need to be tracking a little bit more frequently, at least monthly. So yes, we will. And we're a little bit reliant on some of the data that's been gathered by government agencies, but we also have some local data as well. So more than happy to.
Okay, Councillor.
Audio come through the computer and it's quite hard to hear. So I'm not sure where someone down the back of the room. So it's really quite distracting.
Okay, I'll leave staff to have a look at that and assist with that. I'm also getting now some feedback. I think that's.
And then can we remain sitting while we?
I was just going to say that. So it's easier because we're on Zoom that we remain normal processes. We stand at council meetings, but now that we're on Zoom. And apologies, Kath, I should have asked you to remain seated, but no, that's fine. So if we remain seated and speak. So is that any better, Councillor Nelson? Just turn the phone off. Is it your phone, Councillor? Okay, so is there any questions or discussion around the report? Is there any discussion or questions in regards to the report? Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Worship. Just in regards to page 132, which says some councils to choose to extend the process. Do many councils choose to do that?
There are a number of councils that have not been able to complete consultation and hearings. A number of councils were probably a month behind us. However, the law has changed and has enabled a shorter consultation period. So we know of a few that are still out consulting and at hearing stage now. I don't have the actual numbers, but we were, I guess, in one way lucky that we were ready in February and adopted in March, but in another sense, a number of councils obviously have been able to take into account some of the impacts as they've developed their plan.
Okay, Councillor Nelson and then Councillor Peterson.
Do you think there's any chance that in those conditions that submissions would have been made in a culture of fear and uncertainty in those changing times that it would have impacted upon the submissions that were made?
I think it would be disingenuous of me to suggest that some submitters wouldn't be fearful, uncertain. People were at that stage unsure whether they had jobs and government relief packages hadn't been announced.
If I can just add to that, Councillor Nelson, I think the scope of our consultation document was particularly around three main issues. And you're right, it could have been influenced. We just, how do you know? How do we know? Councillor Peterson.
I just wonder in bullet point 4 on the recommendations whether $200,000 is sufficient. I mean, I do take as a sort of contingency, and I do take note of page 124 where it does not go under council. It says changes to the plan following adoption are more likely, but I just wonder whether we shouldn't have a larger contingency there. Maybe Kath can expand on that, just how easy it is to do that if we need to find more money to spend going forward. They're really uncertain times.
I think that's a decision for council, and we might pick that up further on and further discussions further on. But I think, as staff have alluded to through the report, it is a plan and plans can change. So I think with that in mind, we should feel quite comfortable at the recommended 200,000. And
I wondered actually whether we could sort of come back to that, or we might come back to that in the course of those discussions. Yeah, I mean, it's just good to have that reassurance that we really can find more money if we have very much.
Is there any other questions or discussion? Councillor Kafal?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one thing that I was wondering is that in a number of the recommendations going forward as on the recovery plan, there's no information on how people can access the money that is available in some of these ways. So I was just wondering if that's going to be made available very quickly to people who need to get these funds.
You have to decide to allocate the funding first, and then we can set up the processes and procedures and do the communications and what that amount might be and what criteria might be used for us to be able to publicise it. So once you've done your deliberations today, we can move on those things.
So what you're saying then, Chief Executive, is that it's the council that will decide how it's accessed and the criteria. That's up to us at this time.
Well, you can delegate that to me and my staff, or we can bring that back to you.
Thank you.
I think the recommendation states that the criteria is to be developed, and I think there is an expectation that that would come back to council. Okay, is there any other questions? And welcome, Tito. Is there somebody that would, the recommendation is there? I'm not going to read it all out. You are happy to move? Moved by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Gear. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, the motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on now to item number 9 on the agenda, page 133, the Civic Centre project. We have the report there. Kath, did you want to speak to this, or you? Okay.
So through you, Your Worship, we've taken each of the significant issues from the consultation and presented them as standalone reports to hopefully to assist you in your decision making. We've given a bit of history to the Civic Centre, and we've all been party to those discussions over, some of us many years, some of us since October. There was obviously some consultation and engagement over Christmas, which has been picked up and followed up with the excuse me, development of 2 options that were included in the consultation document. One was the option to demolish the town hall only and retain the facade, municipal buildings and civil defence buildings, and explore the design, cost and location of a new multi-purpose facility that may include the library. Option B was the alternative, which was to demolish the existing buildings and facade and build a new multi-purpose facility encompassing space for events and a new library at the most appropriate location for such a facility. It will come as no surprise to you all, having read all of the submissions and heard the passion with which people spoke at the hearings, that it was a finely balanced response to this question, with 48.6% preferring the option to demolish the town hall only and retain what we call the old municipal building for some future purpose at a future time, with a slight majority of 51.4% preferring option B. Having said that, though, there was a lot of commentary that accompanied the submissions, and it's fair to say that some people like neither of those options, and that obviously gives us a margin of error. And we're sort of pretty close to the same situation that we were in back in February, really, of this year too, where there is no clear public support or sentiment for a particular option, given the way we've presented them over time. What has happened, of course, across the submissions period is that there has become some concern around whether the community can afford a new events / civic centre. There's further information in the report on the deadlines by which we would have to make a decision in order to meet the requirements for earthquake-prone buildings, and obviously we've had a couple of little shakes recently, so we can't lose sight of the fact that some big decisions do need to be made. We did get some further information in the course of the consultation period as requested around the costs of demolition, and those are included in the report. We've also noted what the likely usage and costs of a future event centre based on the numbers that were in the Howarth report in there. That's really just to round out the conversation about how many seats or what sort of size of centre should we be planning for, as there was some feedback that we should be going for something even much larger than what had been proposed by the council. You'll see that almost a third, which is 17, so we are talking low numbers, of those commenting on the Civic Centre proposal mentioned the facade, but there were certainly mixed views. And as we clarified the other day, the facade is listed in our district plan, but is not listed in terms of historic places trust listings. There were some submitters that talked about whether the library should be included or excluded. About 1/4 of those that commented on the current library being okay for now. The reason that the library and archives have been discussed is, one, some of the feedback at rank number 4 the last time we consulted, but also in the long-term plan we're actually planning on looking at our library based on the needs analysis that was done a couple of years ago that showed that it wasn't fit for purpose. Happy to say, just as a segue, that we're about to be able to launch the opening of the Library Learning Centre, so that gives us a temporary buffer in terms of size. There was some comment, as would be expected, on Dave Borman's proposal, and it's fair to say some were very supportive and some were less than supportive, but the one thing to note there is that no matter what the decision is of council in terms of the sites, what's kept, what's not kept, we would obviously put out any construction, design, all of that sort of stuff to the marketplace to get proposals. So it would have to be a transparent public tender process. There was some comment, as you can see in the report, that actually maybe we should be working closer with others, such as the Carterton Event Centre, and that there were a number of alternative sites. So we've given the numbers again in the report around the size and costs, and at the end of the report you will find the staff summation is that given the engagement that's happened over many years, given the current economic circumstances, that staff feel that the best response to the current issues is to demolish the existing 3 buildings and then start to plan for the future. This would give one element of a pipeline of construction that potentially could assist local contractors, and would also enable a decision to actually be made within this triennium. The ideas that we leave things standing as they are now and continue to have dialogue over the next couple of years on what's in it, first of all, what's in an events multi-purpose centre, what design it should take and where it should be, probably a 2 to 3 year process, and that would leave the current buildings in situ for that time, which is ineffectively deferring that decision about what goes on there to another council. So, but as we said, that is only staff's analysis of all of the submissions and feedback to date. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kath. I think Fraser, did you signal?
It's not a question. I thank you for your report, Kath. But there's nothing in there that changes my mind from the comments I made in the February meeting. I believe that the results of the polls, not only taken last year, but also this year, are still not conclusive. The 2.8 margin on the two options presented. I also said at that time that the recommendation, to my view, was premature, and we didn't have any plan for the new civic centre would look like, to demolish a building and then not have something to put in place. To me, is not good planning. So I'm going to suggest that we defer all the work on the municipal building for 1 year, given the situation we're in with post-COVID. And in that time, I think we should go out and determine what we want in a building, the design of it and the cost of it, and see how it measures up to the other options that we put forward. To that extent, I would recommend 5 points. One, that at this time, that we make a firm statement agreeing that a multi-purpose community facility incorporating a town hall be built and mastered. So we have a
Councillor Malman, can I just clarify, are you putting a motion forward?
recommendation motion.
Yes, okay.
So one is that we reach a multi-purpose community facility incorporating a town hall be built and mastered. Approves proceeding with the development and design plans with costings, including fit out for a new multi-purpose facility with an option for arrival either on the existing site or another suitable location. Investigate the potential use of the municipal building and the civil defence building with relevant costings. 4, request that the budget be allocated within the 2020-21 annual plan for design development plans and costings to be completed within 12 months. 5, request that Chief Executive pursue applications to secure funding assistance for the development and design plans to reduce further rating impacts. I believe it's time to make a firm decision in agreeing in terms of the building of the town hall. We go through that as a process in which we look at the design and the costings. We can then look at the comparisons and then make the decision of which way to go forward.
Okay, so are you moving that
I'll
motion?
move that motion.
Is there a seconder to that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Ryan. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded and therefore open for discussion. It's just been handed around. So I think we just need to give people it's just coming around.
On the screen.
It's, sorry, Tina, it's coming around. If we just give everybody a few minutes to read it, Tina, and then okay, has everybody had an opportunity to have a read? Yes? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded and is open for discussion. Councillor Nixon, then Councillor Peterson.
I'm sorry, I can't support this motion at all. I think we're a
You can remain seated if you like, Tina.
Actually, I'd like to stand.
That's fine.
I'm shocked they might not like on Zoom, but
Beauty.
Yeah.
Just got off the
Thanks, Piers, I saw that. But the reality is in the absence of any clear direction, we have to make a decision. And my decision is still to demolish everything, and then that gives us a clean slate to continue and look at a multi-purpose facility if that is the case. But if we're going to delay another year, we're just going to take another ribbing from the community, and justifiably so, simply because we haven't made a decision. And that was one of the major faults that this council, or the criticism that's been levelled to this council in the past. We actually have to show some strength, and all this does is really just put us in a waiting cap, holding pen if you want. And I would rather see us be decisive and make a call one way or the other. And frankly, I'm still for demolition. It's the most cost-effective option for us, and in the time of COVID, cost-effective decisions are what we should be doing. They should be at all our decision making. It still gives us a clear path to actually have a multi-use facility in the future, but it also gives us some work for people who will need it, because the demolition can proceed pretty much straight away.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Peterson, I might just then proceed around the table.
I'm not, don't take the same line as Tina. I just think that with this motion today, we are making a decision that we haven't taken before. In the past, a lot of the discussion was about what we're going to do with the current building, and not really how some new facility might look and where it might go. And I think that's an important discussion, and I think to allow at least a year to have that discussion, and then just put the demolition on hold for that year is a very appropriate step. I mean, once the building's gone, and I think presume that demolition is only a couple of months' work, plus or minus, then it's gone forever, and you just can't recover it. And there were some very good submissions that came to us from David, of course, but from Steve Brown. We haven't really discussed that, and from Tony Mills. And I mean, to say that this surprised me is an understatement, really. I got the agenda out of my letterbox late Sunday evening, and so we had 2 or 3 days to look at digest it. We haven't seen any response from the community to the headline of the paper the other day. I just think that we had an option, or preferred option, that we've decided in a public discussion around this table a while back, and we and many of the community were very happy with that decision. And I think that I don't think that the community at large will be aggrieved if we make a decision today to defer it 1 year, while we do something that's probably been an important thing that we should have been doing for a long time. So
Okay.
I think that's. And I just am reminded way back in my 3rd form, which was a long time ago. I took Latin, which is a few months my age, and the first lesson on the first day was in the Latin text, was festina lente, and it stuck with me. It just says, make haste slowly, but don't do anything in a rush that you're going to regret.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Times are tough at the moment, and I'm concerned about where the economy is heading. But I actually agree with this motion. I really do. And there's several reasons. I think Chris has explained the timing, but I think some of the ideas of better office space and that, I think there's no way that we could ever have office space that gives us time to look at where we're going, and it also gives us time to contemplate what we want. So I think that's about all I can say.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
I have to admit, I'm undecided. I keep flip-flopping between demolishing and starting new, and whether the community can afford the building, which I don't think they can. I'd almost rather not make a decision, but I know that it has to be made. But I think, spending money on a multi-purpose facility at this present time is just ludicrous. And I do tend to agree with people who have said we haven't had a town hall for 4 years now, what differences it made to our community. I think there are other priorities in the community for this. And I'm still undecided, and I don't want to sound like I'm sitting on the bench, but I would push everybody's feeling differently today, especially with the way the economy is, and we're unsure where it will fall. So I actually want to hear everyone else's opinions before I make a decision on this.
Okay, it's fine. Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
I support the motion, obviously, because I seconded it, but it does not exclude demolition. And item 3 may be evaluated within weeks and may show no future need of demolition as a result. Item 1 is my desired outcome. I strongly believe that communities need a place to celebrate, to come together to celebrate its diversity, its social, cultural needs, and then we need a place to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Kia ora, everyone. Your worship, I've thought about a lot about this, and having grown up in this town, as many people have watched different designs for our town. And most of those designs have been following with the trend of the day. And 20 years later, they're outdated, and while people might argue that what we have in front of us is a classic, I would suggest that actually that cost that I've heard Graham talk about and he'll talk more to this, I'm sure our deputy mayor, in terms of having a design that's a wide open design. I don't think it includes what we have. I'm willing to listen, but we're putting forward our point of view. And so that's your arrangement. So I don't support the submission. There's another saying in my third form in terms of passion, comes from a movie called The Poet Society. Okay, I'll admit I was teaching in the class. And it's your carpe diem, seize the day. Well, when we have an opportunity to seize the day.
Thank you, Councillor Gaffal.
Thank you, Your Worship. I strongly support the motion. I certainly believe, I mean, I was a bit like Chris, when I saw the recommendation, I was a bit gobsmacked because I think there's one thing that people were agreeing on before this this meeting here was that we did need a civic centre. Certainly, and it would be literally hundreds of people that I've spoken to. There'd be a very small percentage who would say we don't need a civic centre. So I think the civic centre, having a civic centre, is very important. I also believe that the closeness of the vote, if you like, at the present time between retaining the municipal buildings and not retaining the municipal buildings is encapsulated well in this motion. It gives us an opportunity to look very closely at where we're going. We're talking here about a year's being mentioned as a year before we make a decision, but in that year, I take it that we will be visiting other civic centres, looking around to see what other designs are available. And so I would have believed anyway, no matter what we did, it would have taken a year to 18 months before we came to a decision on what we wanted in the community centre, in the new centre anyway. So the time lag really would have happened in any case. I always believed before this meeting that we had the horse before the cart on this a bit, or the cart before the horse, on the basis that we hadn't made a decision on what we wanted in a new town hall or civic centre. And we were before we decided where the location and whatever, I think that had to be the first decision, and this gives us that opportunity. I'm absolutely, quite frankly, I'm absolutely wrapped in it because it gives us a chance to still look at whether we can do something with the municipal buildings. And if we can't, and I mean, I've been a very strong supporter of the municipal buildings being retained, but I've always taken the view that if after we've had the discussions and we come up with a design and a scope which it would be better presented if the municipal buildings weren't there and that we use the site completely free, then I would go for that. It will all come down to cost of design, and this gives us the opportunity to have a very close look at those aspects. So I'm solidly in support of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McClymont.
Yes, thank you. As the chair of the working group that looked at all of this, and unfortunately 2 councillors, John Dozell and Ziggy, haven't come through to this council. But I struggle with this number 3, investigate potential use. If you read all the work we did, we've done all this work. We've actually investigated it to death. There's even been detailed plans of how you can restructure the building. The real problem is finding a use for it. But bigger than that is, if it's a public building, which we all agreed we're going to keep hold of it, it's got to be level 3. So immediately you're up to 6.5 million for minimum for strengthening and refurbishing. So the potential of cost overruns in the current climate with earthquake codes and engineering, and you only got to look at what's happened to the town clock and Carterton, there'll be a massive overrun on a tiny project compared to this. We've only got as-built plans, 1915 sketches of the foundations under this building. I can guarantee it's going to have cost overruns. My biggest problem with this, waiting any longer to demolish this thing, is whatever way you look at it, it potentially absorbs a whole heap of the budget. You're going to split 6.5 million minimum into the municipal building, and that's just going to greatly reduce what you spend on a new build. So I'm still for just demoing the lot, getting a nice clear site. We've all agreed that we want to, well, virtually all agree we want to go forward with designing something, but you're just going to waste budget. So I'm not probably going to support it because it's free in there. We've done that work. I don't know what more and how much longer you lot need to sort this out.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Nelson.
Strongly support the motion. Like Councillor Peterson, Councillor Holmes, I was astounded when I saw the recommendation. I felt, in my view, was that it was being put through under COVID-19 as an excuse. I think that if this is taking action, it's not taking action. So I disagree with that point of view, and I strongly support it. Thank you, Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Councillor Tito.
Yeah, we've had this discussion quite a number of times, and I've been always sort of supportive of demolishing it, just because I'm thinking of the future generations, and if there's going to be any possible use of this building, what's that environment going to look like for them? Because we've already seen a change in how people interact socially now after the lockdown period. There's other ways that we're already, socially kind of lost that youth voice as well within this whole aspect of this civic centre project. Because ideally, it's going to be them that's going to be left with looking after it, utilising it, however best they see. Right now, we're in the period now, we want to be able to do something right now. But I kind of think the future use hasn't really been looked at properly in regards to what the future looks like for future councillors, actually. Who are going to have this? Is it going to be another white elephant? Is it going to be even available for them to be utilising in the way that they see it? So I'm down for demolishing it. Let's also look at where they're coming from too. They may not want to use it. They may not even see the benefit of it. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tito. Brent.
Look, I was for demolition, and that wasn't an emotional decision. That was purely based on numbers and potential cost and difference in clearing the site versus pumping $6.5 million into it is $4.4 million added to the debt the country's facing in the future because of COVID. That only really strengthened my position in terms of let's demolish it and get on with it. Sometimes a painter needs a blank canvas to decide what to actually put on it. So yes, I'm for demolition. A lot of the work that is, to Graham's point, has already been done. It's been 4 years, it will now be 5 years. We're all in agreement, I think, that the town hall needs to come down. It's what the next step. And we clearly heard in the submission process that something similar looking, if not exactly the same, could in fact be rebuilt. There are older buildings in Masterton that, whilst weren't in public ownership, have been taken down. There was no outcry. Let's get on with it. Public are demanding a decision. And does this council's wish to vote in favour of this motion so that we actually get some progress going forward? I'd love to see that, but it needs to be quicker than 12 months if possible.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Just some comments from me, and then I'll go back to Councillor Malman as a mover if he wishes to exercise his right of reply. So this has been on the books for a long time. They traditionally do. That's what happens because they're not easy decisions. So in thinking about this, and I support the demolition of the municipal building, but however, on reflection on it, we were getting caught up about the demolition of the building. But what side of the argument you were on, or side of the debate, a bit like the public, we were very split in the middle. But what we're not split in the middle about, by majority, I suspect, listening to the conversation now, is that we need a new multi-purpose facility for our town. So given that the proposal, and it was referred to in the report as the Bullman proposal, that was a multi-purpose facility that the second plan didn't encroach on the municipal building site. And the desire by others that a whole new multi-purpose community facility be built either on this site or at a different location suits both sides of the argument. It's only when we start talking about the municipal hall that people get a bit, do we demolish it or do we not? So I'm supporting the recommendations, the motion here, because for me, it allows us to proceed with the development and the design of a multi-purpose building, whether it is on the existing site or whether it is at a different location. And to me, that is a huge step forward so that we can get on and we can get a design, we can talk to our community about what the requirements will be, what needs to be in there and the detail of that. So this at least allows us to move forward. We've had the debate about demolition, and I supported the demolition. That was voted down. This is a way forward that allows us to move and start designing what everybody agree, the majority of people agree with, that we do need a multi-purpose facility. So I suppose for me, I'm asking let's not get hung up whether it's on the edge of our current site or whether it's at a different location. Let's just get on and move forward with it. So, Councillor Malman, I don't know whether you wanted a right of reply.
No, I think everything's been said about it. We've had several debates over it, and I believe if this is carried, we get on with it straight away, and we get in there and get some plans and get on in a bus and have a look around and come back with something really concrete.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to ask a question to the executive. What's the possibility of truncating the timeline down from a year to 6 months, taking into consideration the work that Councillor Malman is asking for under his amendment?
And I guess it depends on how much community involvement you want in the designing what the future space includes. We did a bit of what users wanted back in 2018-19, and there wasn't a common consensus. Users wanted whatever they wanted versus what the community wanted. And we did a bit more on what perhaps people would like to see in the previous bit. So it's about that part of it, about stepping out what it does. It's about how much involvement or how autocratic you wish to be. So, you know, if you want to have things that iterate and then a design that then is presented back and public comment or run design competitions, those sorts of things, they take a bit longer. The thing that isn't clear in the recommendation to me is whether the municipal building and civil defence building is at all part of the structure, because that totally affects the design elements, so that would need to be clarified with yourselves. So that actual user requirements and stuff like that probably will be a couple of months anyway. But yes, you can get a design and some plans and some rough costings on square meterage. But the other thing is you don't know where it is in this, so you will have to factor in pluses and minuses on other sites, I guess, that we may or may not own. So I wouldn't, you know, having received this today, I wouldn't want to say that I could do it faster than 12 months. And then the other bit is the other potential uses of the municipal building and civil defence buildings with relevant costings. Well, we did get relevant costings for shelves, we did get relevant costings for refurbishment to a sort of office type thing, and that all came in at 11.65 million. So the question that I would have back in terms of the time you want me to spend on those aspects is what more do you need to know?
I think that question was more about potential tenants if there is, and that's an open question. Just to pick up, demolishing the building though doesn't progress anything.
Yes, it does. If we demolish the building, we clear the site, and we. I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that we have to start looking at a multi-use facility. Never said that I don't want a multi-use facility. What I'm saying is the most pragmatic decision we can make right at the moment is the low cost, it's simple, immediate demolition of all of the buildings. Simple.
Okay, yeah.
I just got a question, Your Worship. The steering committee that was run by Graham,
yes,
you've lost 2 of its members. Are you proposing to put Fraser in there? Well, he may well have been on it, but are you going to form a new committee?
Yeah, I think we need to have that discussion. It doesn't need to happen now,
No, okay.
but I think we do need to have a working group depending on what the result of the this vote is and the way forward. So look, thank you everybody. The motion is there, it's been moved and seconded. So I'm going to put the motion. So ask that those in favour please raise their right hand. Okay, and I'll put my hand up to that as well. So those against?
Recorded, please.
Okay, you've got that?
Would you like me to read them out? Read them back?
Record them all.
Yes, you better.
So in favour, I have Councillor Holmes, Councillor Cathell, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Nelson, Councillor Peterson and Mayor Patterson. And against, I have Councillor Johnson, Councillor McClymont, Councillor Gare and Councillor Nixon.
Okay, thank you. Yep, that's right, recorded correctly. Okay, thank you. So the motion is passed, and hopefully we can start getting some plans together on the on what's required. Okay, so moving on now to item number 10 is the Henley Lake proposal on page 146. So is this hand over to you, Keith, whether you wanted to speak to the Henley Lake proposal?
So this one hopefully is a little bit more straightforward in terms of the couple of proposals that were put out. One was to apply for a consent, which did have a reasonable cost and a significant unlikelihood of success. And the alternative was to still apply for a consent, but to get the consent to take water above or not at low flow. And the consent element is the key element of the lake, because without a consent to take water, you don't have a lake. So that's the first part. So the public were very clear, I think in their feedback, COVID or non-COVID related, that seeking a consent, something we were unlucky to get, was not their favourite option. Then the other option included some funding for amenity planting boardwalks into the future, and gave an opportunity for, I guess, some stimulus work of a low level. I don't want to mislead anyone. The boardwalk is going to be a lot more costly than the amounts of money that are put aside in here, but as we've discussed throughout the process, there are other options, line paths, those sorts of things. Through the course of the consultation process, we also heard that the Henley Lake Trust were really keen to work with the users to resolve and the council to resolve some of the current issues. We have had highlighted to us, some users may not understand the entire system and therefore adapt the system for their own uses. For example, to keep the lake level high, which has a detrimental effect on water egress and on the wetlands. There was also some discussion too around future and planning for it, and so staff have recommended that we do revisit a reserve type management plan with the community and the trust, and come up with a master plan for the area that we can work to over time. And taking the approach of a consent that is recommended in this, we could also just wait and see how the lake levels go over next year as well. And obviously there are some bits or buckets of government funding out there that have been announced over the last 4 to 8 weeks that may be suitable for some of the amenity works, if I call them that, in terms of the boardwalk and planting. So there's an opportunity that some of this work can be funded and that potentially worker redeployment could be looked at. So we, as the staff, have put forward a recommendation that broadly reflects 70% of the feedback that we received on the consultation itself. Happy to take any questions, or for questions to be directed to the manager of assets and operations and community facilities and activities.
Okay, thank you, Kath. Councillor McClymont.
I'm going to suggest a change, which I'm happy to read out and then move a motion. So I'm going to go, agrees to modify the current resource consent application to take water from the Rimahunga River above minimum flow with an initial budget of $50,000 in 2021 for the application costs, and then 2 and 3 as per recommendations. And I'm happy to discuss reasons for doing this.
Do you want to do that now?
Well, okay, yeah. So the minute we go down the lake action route, there's not really any coming back. We've got a very confused management strategy going on. I thought we'd actually buried any wetland planning or boardwalks in the meantime, but it's come back up. I still want to see it as a passive recreation lake for mainly for Wakaranga and dragon boating. I haven't actually given up on other options of alternative water sources or using bores. All I merely did at the moment is to save in this time the cost of pursuing a consent that we probably wouldn't get. But I haven't actually given up on saving the lake in its current state. The minute you plant wetland plants around there or put boreworks, and then somebody will, and if we can get water out of the river, then everyone will say we can't, we'll flood the plants. So it's just confused. It leads to confusion. There's plenty of other work that we can apply for money for, and around Henry Lake. We don't have to approach inside that lake and start putting wetland planting. So that's my reasoning.
Okay, so are you moving that?
I'll move that.
Is there a seconder?
Move that
Okay.
change.
Seconded, Councillor Johnson. And Councillor Holmes, I don't know which one was first. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so just for clarification, 2 and 3 are the same. But the first one changes. What you're doing is removing the make changes to the lake to adapt over time. And the first stage of lakeside adaptation and the remaining budget of 200 spread over 2 years. Is that's what you're doing for the reasons that you've stated? Okay. Councillor Holmes?
Well, I think we should, as far as the consent goes, we can show what we can do what we do with the Waihura and the Memorial Park. And the non-consumption consent, so that really the water flows and it flows out. The wetlands will improve as waters, which is flowing beautifully into the lake at the moment, and will all winter. As it goes into wetlands, they will seal down the bottom there. I don't agree with the boardwalks or the planting near the lake, but I do agree we have to, working with the trust is a must. So I'm all for Graham's motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Peterson, then Councillor Keir. Maybe we can go. Maybe we'll go around the table. Sorry.
I've been for any recommendations. I think money for the seat out. It's not going to be a lot of money. I think regardless of I fully support what Graham's saying about investigating ways to maintain the water lake over time. But I think there's some that happens, we can still look at planting around the margins of the lake. So, improve the abilities and look to improve the look of the lake. And I think there wouldn't be a lot of money for that in this first year, but it would enable you to start getting organised for doing a substantial further adaptation. In the bottom, rather than having to, what Graham's really saying is just have a go and see if there's nothing for a year, and I think we need to look at, we look to establish nursery rather.
You, Councillor. I'll just proceed round. Councillor.
Yeah, I support Graham's motion. I also really keen to see the trust playing a much more a strong role in this. And we talk a lot in this council about community led, but this is a project that can absolutely be community led around the trust. The other thing is the government is just holds bowls hand over fist, created huge funds around green initiatives. And so I think there's some real opportunities for external funding for things that we want to do within the lake. So we can support that.
Okay. Councillor Malman.
Yes, I support Graham's motion, and I'm on the opinion that we should let nature take its course, make sure the guidelines we've got there seems to be working well.
Councillor Keir.
I support Deputy Member Clymont's motion as well, and agree with Councillor Holmes. The trust must which I think is a nice little rhyme, continue to be involved in a very large way as almost kaitiaki really of Henley Lake. So I wholeheartedly support the motion, and the longer it remains for our waka ama, after some two very impassioned submissions that came on the end of our process, as is whereas. So I support Deputy Mayor McClymont.
Okay, Tita.
Yes. I mean, well, just relates to the video itself, so to see it being connected and restored in the moment today.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
I endorse it strongly. I just can't sure, as it says, we should continue working with the Lake Trust. There's no read 812 discussion of the Lake Trust, but I wasn't quite right. The other side of the council and the trust aren't working well together. So I really think that the role should be significant in the management of the lake.
Okay, just for clarification, I think that there is our council staff and the Henley Lake Trust do have quite a good working relationship, but may not always agree with times, but I'm not going to get into that discussion. Councillor McClymont. Oh, sorry, you've moved it. Councillor Gaffal.
Yes, Your Worship, I support the motion as well. It's been one of the things I've really wanted about Henley Lake is just to leave it as it is, to see it stay as it is. And this option, I think, gives us that opportunity. I'd also like to just say to people, if you go down and look at the lake now, it's probably in the best condition that I've seen it for 30 years. It's in magnificent order, and if we can just leave it as it is now, I think it would be fine. So, yeah, I'm for the motion.
Thank you. Ra?
You should probably support the motion too. It's in the year of waka ama. This waka ama is past years-old memory. To a group of 6 to 9-year-olds. So there's a future group coming through there. There are other considerations, but I just wanted to highlight that pieces for our support.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
Well, I originally formed the development of wetlands and the planting, but since the inlet's been redeveloped and water is flowing so well, I changed. I've seen the quality of the water, etc. And I think yes, it's to change the status quo at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson, sorry.
I support the motion.
Okay. Okay then, just to, I wonder whether I think if we can continue to work with the Henley Lake Trust, that there may be some of the work that was possibly envisaged initially may still be able to go ahead with consensus from Council and the Henley Trust. I mean, I'm not saying that it needs to be a boardwalk or whatever, but I'm sure that the management plan might tease out some of that work that we're able to proceed with. So, Graham, did you want a right of reply to the motion? Okay, so it's been moved by Deputy Mayor McClymont and seconded by. Yeah.
So, with your indulgence, within the original budget was the automated. Within the original budget was the automation of the control feature. If you take that away from us, we can't actually improve the management.
Yeah, so there are aspects of that adaptation that we've asked for there. It's not all planting. some of it is actually improving the water flow, maximising what we can do. At the moment, it's a manual system. We do investments in that so we get clarity on the future of the consent. We've now got with your resolution, we've got some clarity on the future of where we're going. I would recommend that we actually do some adaptation work and automate that system. So that's partly you're taking away a bit of my money to do that.
Okay, so.
But I do recognise what you're saying with regard to planting, but certainly adaptation isn't just planting. There is a little bit of management systems there that we can now improve the flows through that system.
So if we can just.
No, I don't mean all of that. A fully automated control system will range between 20 to 30,000.
So what did you call it? A fully automated control system? Is it?
Yeah, it's a remote flow control system.
Is that at the inlet or is that at the?
That's in the
How do we stop ground? With the ground systems,
So we're still going to maintain.
Wow.
Yes, well, we've already got delivery on the system that will be able to maximise the water take we can take at any one time. When you know the river goes up and down, what we want to do is maximise the water we can take with the cycle. But it will cost a lot of money to do that, and that was part of the mitigation budget on both sides. I won't feel comfortable with that because it's a bit of wiggle room to make sure we deliver on those.
Okay, with permission of Deputy Mayor and Councillor Johnson, that moved and seconded, if we can change that to include 80,000 and to take water from the river of minimum flow with an interim budget of full consent, application costs and telemetry. Is that an automation of the intake? Are you fine with that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so with that change, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your right hand. Those against, the motion is carried. Tina was just a bit slow putting her head down.
Seriously, originally dyslexic, so I can't tell my left from my right.
You're going to take a break, do you? You need a 5 minutes?
No. We'll go on to the next one, which is the skate park, and then we might just have a quick break. Actually, Councillor, that's why you suggested it. Thank you, Kath. I'm just sorry. I'm thinking, why do we want a break now? Sorry. So look, if we can just adjourn for till 5-10 minutes. Back at 11:30. Is he back now? No. No,
just leave it.
No, we don't clock out. We'll just leave it there. So if we just adjourn for and reconvene at 11:30. Okay. Why did you just?
You've got to stop touching me.
Hey, Tara, good to see you again.
Yeah. See you in 3 days, not 2 days.
We'll call a meeting to order, thank you. Okay, so we're up to item number 11, skate park proposal, page 157. We all back? Yep. Okay, so the report is there. Kath, did you want to speak to the report?
Definitely, thank you. So elections will report that we're doing our trial of parks and things for the town centre strategy, part of the response to encouraging more youth into our public spaces. It was felt during that time that actually they had a perfectly good skate park and that they should utilise that asset, or that asset should be developed further. So following that feedback, very enthusiastic skate park group community, I don't know quite what the appropriate term is, has worked really closely with council staff and designer on what the future skate park could look like and address some of the shortcomings in the skate park that there are currently, but also take it to really the next level. Skate park that could be used potentially for regional and national type competitions. The initial proposals that were put into the consultation document accepted as a basic premise that there was some significant work to be done to get to that standard, and we're ostensibly around should the council invest up to $500,000 and expect the community at large to come up with the remainder of the costs, or alternatively invest a lower amount that would put some of a larger burden, I guess, on the community to come up with the match funding to take the skate park forward. Option A was the preferred option during the consultation process. One thing to potentially note is that we didn't get feedback from the skate park community through the process. Probably a bit of a factor of the age and stage of life that they were at when we went into lockdown. So just a little bit of a caveat around those numbers, and they generally young people aren't a target demographic that do respond to formal consultation processes. What we have noted in the report is that the skate park is really well used, and as we've discussed during lockdown, it was actually one of the facilities that we could see our young brain to get back to a lot quicker than lockdown levels would have suggested, but that aside, it certainly is and has been well used subsequently. We've also noted that affordability and potential match funding from co-funders could be more difficult for the group itself to raise at this time. However, that said, council staff have already, and we've attached one of the applications that we've made to see if we can get some funding from government construction pipeline shovel-ready projects, and that has been subsequently referred through to the provincial growth unit. What we do have is some funds sitting in the reserve that could be applied to doing revamping or upgrade work, and that's noted in the report. And staff have made a recommendation to you that we, as a council, commit to the full scope of works. We've added a contingency, it's $1.35 million in total, and there are $300,000 sitting in the reserve that can be applied to the project. And the remainder of the funding we would loan fund, so take on borrowing. However, we are reasonably optimistic that we will be successful in obtaining some funding, particularly if council funding is in there as seed or match fund. Happy to take any questions, and I'm sure the manager of community facilities and activities would also be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Kath. So you have the report in front of you. Is there any direct question, Councillor Kafan?
Not so much a question, Your Worship. I'd just like to move the recommendation as a motion. I believe that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to do something for the youth of our town. The majority of people who use the youth park, the skate park, are young, but they've got a hell of a good community. They're a very close community. I've spoken to them personally on a number of occasions and was involved in some of the discussions in the early part of this, and was really taken with the drive that these young people had, and also with, I might say, with the support that they've been given by AJ and the staff here at the council. I believe that the skate park, if you bring the skate park up to a national standard, you're going to have it as a real attraction in town. It's going to be part of a complex at Queen Elizabeth Park, which is already probably the reason that a lot of people come and visit us, quite frankly, is our park, and that is going to be very much a part of that. And as this report says, even if the park does need work done to it now, and urgently, this is just going to boost it up further. I think this is going to be money really well spent, and I also think that in the time of COVID, where we're needing something as a community to look at and be proud of, this is something that we can really get behind as a council without spending the sort of money we're talking about for a town hall or something. This is $1 million, and I just think that it's going to be so worth it for the town to see something like this going up as we recover from COVID. So I would like to move the recommendation as a motion.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Okay, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so open it up for discussion. Tito?
I'm just a question regarding the project stuff. How many dogs have been estimated to come out of this? About that? Right people, training opportunities?
Three.
Yeah.
Your Worship. We haven't done a hard and fast quantification of the number of people in whether this is quite specialist work. However, we would hope that there will be an opportunity for some people to be engaged or redeployed and trained in that. And if it's got shovel-ready funding, for example, there are elements of all of the funding agreements that have the social procurement aspects to them. In general, one example that we've signed regarding the forestry work have had planting, Pacifica, redeployment and training. So the expectation would be that there would be an element that if it comes from a government source, you need to co-fund it.
I'm just wondering within the these young people who would have an opportunity to training on how they have social ownership of it. So I think
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
I support the recommendation because Queen Park is to us as a regional park. It helps holistic tourism because it will be an attraction to people with families from outside the area. And it's time to it's well utilised now and increase usage.
Thank you. Is there any other? Councillor Kenyon?
Yeah, again, I support this motion. I think it is a fantastic part of what is an amazing and indeed an award-winning park. This is one decision that is from council. I think money well spent.
Councillor Nixon, and then Councillor Malman, then Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, I'd like to support this motion too. We're going to probably end up settling some of our future generations for costs around the town hall centre. So at least I'm going to be able to give them something in this generation. The other thing that I think the skate park is good for is we are looking at increasing our domestic tourism here, and it's around that family option. And I saw that park just absolutely humping the other day, and it was so heartening to see. I am worried about the vandalism, continued vandalism in the little kids' skate area, which I think is something we need to get on top of as well. But to me, my grandkids who are both before absolutely adore that place. And so it really is us doing something now, because we don't think that we'll be taking them off if they stay here in the future.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Malm and Councillor Holmes.
Yes, I support this, the motion or recommendation. Commend the staff for putting it towards shovel ready, and hopefully we get a really good outcome from that. I've been recently involved in an application for the Lottery Facilities Commission, and I note that they fund up to 2/3 of the project and 1/3, and I'm sure that we could demonstrate that we've got 1/3 there, should it arise.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes, then Councillor Peterson.
I suppose as well, but Ken has already mentioned vandalism, and there's a way you've got kids that are using it, the kids that are abusing it. So perhaps they should take sides and but it's obviously a very specialist requirement of building it. So is it out of the league of a lot of our local builders? It's just a question I'd like to ask.
For you, I don't think it's out of the league. There's some elements though that obviously are more difficult than others, but we would be certainly hoping that potentially some people that supply concreting services in the locality would be available for contract work for.
Councillor Peterson, then Councillor Ryan, then Councillor Deputy Mayor.
But just also noting that, you know, a quarter at least of that money is just required for renewal, upgrade, repair, bring it up to as it is now. So, and I think it needs to add significantly to the attraction of that whole precinct. So, yeah, great, excellent.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Councillor Peterson, all my words really. It's all about creating, such a great space to be in town. Recreation, social recreation together. It just makes sense to refurbish that. Does it has to be refurbished anyways? Rebuild, bring it up to the rebuild, and bring it up to the landscape, be rich on. That's the concept land, which is outstanding. And I think that North London tourism, it'll be a great place for our families. We're trying to encourage families, young families to come live here, and when they're here to stay, so it's here to stay. Win-win.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I also fully support it. Probably a little bit of a different reason. I'm really fearful that it's going to be a protracted period of youth unemployment. So anything like this Wakarama, the half courts, the BMX track that people can access very cheaply, is going to be a great social thing. I take on Giro's point about the vandalism there. The Kids Zone playground, which was great back in the old non-health and safety days. We had a huge amount of community input into that, and we only ever had one bout of bad vandalism probably 5 years ago now. And all the years that that timber thing sat there. So buy-in is critical to reducing vandalism. So we need to look at some way of being able to involve the users into the design and the construction of it. But as for the design might be out of town, but there's plenty of people, local contractors that can build a skate park. It's not an issue.
Okay. Sorry, Ra, did you have your hand up? No? Okay, Councillor Nelson.
I support the recommendation. I think it shows the council really walking the walk, the heart, and doing something for the people who choose not to have a voice or they don't have a voice because of their age.
I think the thing around vandalism is when I have such a factor because somebody using it. It's there, they sort of police the venue themselves. I love that in the report about looking beyond our towns and things like the sort of sports like the moral pathway, whereas once they weren't. And I think this is also a sport that's accessible to all sectors of our community. Just not only it's expensive to get involved, it's right in the middle of town, but all parts of the town. So well done with that recommendation, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that hasn't spoken that wants to speak? Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded, so I'll now put the motion. If there's no further discussion, all those in support, please raise your right hand. Those against, the motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item number 12, the annual plan deliberations, other topics, page 175 to 184. So these are the, as you're aware, we went, our consultation document specifically spoke to the Civic Centre, the Henley Lake and the Skate Park proposal, but there were other suggestions that and ideas that were raised by submitters through the submission process, and this is a response to them. So Kath, do you want to take it as read, or did you want to speak to anything in particular on this?
No, I'd be more than happy for it to be taken as read and for the staff to answer any questions that the members may have.
Okay, Councillor Holmes.
Just wondering what our council's thoughts are on tonight. No, it doesn't work, but I don't know whether that's good. So
I think it still aligns with the recommendation in number 3. Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Just on the recommendations, the only one I don't support is recommendation number 9, which is including the revisit the community's appetite willingness to pay for a dog park. I'm a dog owner, we've got 2 dogs. I think it's the new options for taking dogs out. Gary probably agree with that. And it's just, I would see it as a waste of staff's time. Been there, done that.
Okay, Councillor Nixon.
I would support Councillor Johnson's to support the dog park. The AMP showgrounds provides the leash run option. So it is, it's probably hasn't been well publicised. So council taking up money at something like that when that facility is available.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion or questions on the recommendations? No? Well, I was going to put them, I was going to do them in their entirety, but possibly just change the wording in number 9, which is on the top of page 176, is that yes, you most certainly can make a suggestion.
Why don't you put 1 to 8 and maybe 9 is put separately, it may pass or it may fail.
Okay. So I'll put all of the recommendations except number 9 to the vote, and then we'll see. So is there someone prepared to recommendation to move by Councillor Nixon, seconded? Councillor Nelson. Okay, so that's all recommendations, page 175 to 176, excluding 9. All those in favour of the recommendations, please say aye. Hands up. Against. Motion is carried. So number 9, I'll put the motion that is stated there, and we'll just see where it lands. Council revisit the community's appetite and willingness to pay for a dog park as part of its engagement on the 2021-31 long-term plan. All those.
No, do you have a seconder?
Oh yes, thank you.
And if you don't have a seconder,
thank you. Is there a seconder for that? No.
So you moved it, you need a second.
No, I just said the recommendation is there. Did I move it? I didn't think I had. No, it needs to move it. Yeah, that was a confusing. So is there somebody that is prepared to move that recommendation? Moved by councillor Peterson. Is there anyone to second that recommendation? No, there isn't. So the recommendation, line comes out.
It fails for want of a seconder.
It fails for want of a seconder, yes.
And my reason for moving it was that I was very supportive of the word here to revisit to discuss it again.
Okay, so the appropriate response will go back that that was not accepted. Okay, so moving on now to page 185 to 219. We have the fees and charges. Is there one alteration? Is that alteration?
Can I speak to it?
Yeah, okay. I'll just hand over to the chief exec to speak to the fees and charges.
Thank you. There was two corrections that we wish to draw your attention to. The first one was spotted by the mayor, which was a transposition of a fee on page 9 and
no, sorry.
No, and
yeah, page 9.
In the fees and schedules part.
Additional charges, limited notification.
I think the mayor would like to speak to it.
What page?
201.
Oh, it's 201. Sorry, I was page 9 of the fees and schedule. The schedule. Go, Kath.
So the limited notification, the jump there was to $537. That was a transposition of numbers. It's $357. So that means that the current fee stays the same. So when you move this, could we note that? And Harriet's put the other one up there too. And there was a change to the dates on one of the items, which was to refer to the long-term plan 2021 to 2031, which is the 10 years of the long-term plan.
What page is that?
What is it, Harriet?
I was in the previous item.
So we'll do that off the previous item. So that was two corrections. My apologies.
It's been a long morning. Okay, so sorry, you've incorporated those changes, have you, Harriet? On that? It's in bold up there, which number 2. Oh no. Right, sorry, number 4. And including an amendment to correct the planning limited notification fee to 357. Thank you,
Your
Harriet.
Worship. So we'd happily take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just wanted to make a point on page 187 about the solid waste. It's always negative public feedback about our tip charges, and I think sometimes we're looking at it the wrong way. I think we need to have positive stories about there's no fee increases for green waste, recycling costs are included in your rates. People are missing the message that it's because they're increasing the amount of rubbish, their costs are increasing. So I think we've done a really good education marketing on water usage and conserving water. And I just think there's more that we could be doing with regards to recycling, reusing rubbish.
I think that's a valid point. I'm sure that
Staff would happily take that up, and we have a waste minimisation coordinator between the councils too.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Gear.
Yeah, just referring to page 16 or page 208, the duplicate licence has gone up 316.67%, which sounds a lot when it's gone from $6 to $25. That's the proposed new fee. Is that due to compliance costs, or is that just an anomaly as well?
So could you refer to the page again?
208
Page
or 16 operation fees.
Big percentage, but small monetary.
Yeah. I just wonder why 6 to 25 is $19 difference is quite large.
So I've noticed that part of it was to align with other licenses, that kind of work, some of it is about aligning out the hourly rates. So they've aligned it to the time it takes, and there's an alignment across the
Cool, that's fine. That's nice. Thank you.
Councillor Nixon.
How many duplicate licenses do we produce a year? That's a good question. So I'm just wondering whether the transactional cost is worth it. I mean, you put up a fee because there was a transaction, but there's not many transactions. Why would you bother?
I don't think we had that information to hand to make that decision. Okay, Councillor Johnson.
I was going to ask a question of interest. Fees for swimming pools.
Page.
That's page 196. It just, how does it work? Is that an inspection or is it just considered as a building or what's the, how does it work?
And there's both, so.
Okay, is Councillor Caffel?
Just one thing, Your Worship. I think needs to be noted that, and this is not a criticism of staff, just a criticism, just the basis of COVID-19 got in the way, but on the fees, on the submission process, this was probably the one that was affected the worst, in that you see there where 52% did not support the proposed fees and charges, but because the form had a yes, no, a lot of the no's, in fact, I would say, look, there was only 12 specific comments on fees. A lot of the no's didn't actually express what they were against, so it was really difficult to form it. There might be a lot more opposition to some of these things than we actually fought through the submission process.
Yeah.
In addition, we have changed the fees and charges since subsequently as a result of COVID as well. So you've already made some changes in your first tranche of recovery and response initiatives. And the submitters could, as with all the other areas, give alternative feedback.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't criticising staff for how it worked out. It just unfortunately it worked out that way, and fees seemed to be the one that got the most affected.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Caffel. We're not taking it as a criticism. I just wanted for everyone to understand actually there was some significant adjustments to the fees immediately.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
You know how we check the swimming pools every 3 years, and you know how we have, this is going to seem a bit weird, you know how we have a responsible dog owner policy as well, and we check the dog's environment first, and then they become a responsible dog owner. Do we go back then and check that every year or every 3 years, or once someone's a responsible dog owner, is that it? Because it seems weird to me that if you've got an underground swimming pool and it's checked every 3 years, why should it be checked every 3 years unless something's changed? It's $500. It's just.
So no, that's the building consent fee for the in-ground swimming pool. There.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think we're legally required in that particular one. The responsible dog owner one has only just come in for this council, so we'll happily look at how often we look at that. But obviously, if there are any complaints against someone, that does affect their ability to hold the responsible owner.
I'm just using it as an example, because if you build a shed, the person doesn't come back every 3 years to check the sheds.
So does the Swimming Pool Act legislation that calls for that 3-year frequency?
It's nonsense.
Before proportion is quite low from my experience in other councils of changes, but some of the changes are quite restrictive that actually do release safety issues. So it's about the risk that's involved is what legislation is there that you can end up with a lot of free access to a pool, and that's what we're trying.
I understand that, but I also have, just making a point really, if it's checked once, unless something changes, you know, I'm just making a point. Sometimes the laws are mass. And yes, we do have a swimming pool.
And yes, it's in ground.
Yeah.
Noted.
Has it been inspected lately?
Up to 100.
Jump off the fence.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions or discussion on the schedule of fees and charges? If not, now I've lost my page.
185.
Thank you. If not, is there somebody prepared to move 1 to 4 with that adjustment, with the amendment to the planning limited notification date? Moved by councillor Nixon, seconded by councillor Malman. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, the motion is carried. Thank you. Now moving on to the annual plan deliberations, proposed budget changes, and we have the supplementary paper. I just ask the Chief Exec and the Manager of Finance, should we be doing these two together? We should. So if I can suggest that we adjourn for 10 minutes, it should hopefully be read within that we can go through and read the supplementary paper. It's a very good suggestion, Councillor.
I'm quite happy to move the recommendation.
Okay.
As a motion.
Okay, so we're now on page 236, that we received the dog registration and associated fees and adopt the proposed fees. It's been moved by councillor Coucil and seconded by councillor Gear. Is there, did you want to speak to this, anybody, or take it as read?
I would love it if it was taken as read, and the reason we're doing it separately is we give a month's notice of any fee as we're required to by law, and we're also providing a bit of grace period, I think, for everyone to get their finances sorted in terms of taking advantage of a lower fee.
Okay, is there any questions or discussion? There appears none. It's been moved and seconded, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, the motion is carried. We will now go back to page 220 and just adjourn for 5 minutes just to have a read through the supplementary report. Yeah.
that went into the consultation document, and then some of the decisions that you've made today as well, which are different to some of the recommendations. There'll be a little bit of massaging that needs to happen post this meeting to get all of the numbers aligned. For example, this was based on the recommendations staff put in, and you've spent a little bit less on Henley Lake, for example. So we'll just need to factor in all of those. But where we got to for the consultation document was an average rate increase of 6%. That's the 6% increase in the rate take too. Then we stripped out as much as we could from the budget that we didn't think was practical to do, where there was perhaps some money that did not seem like a good piece of expenditure to take forward in these particular times. We've also taken away some funding for councillor lunches and dinners, as indicated from yourselves. So we've really gone through line by line and looked at the big and the small that we can make a difference on. And in doing that, we also had to take into account some projections on our revenue. So you will see that in our assumptions, and they may or may not be accurate, but they were the best estimates that we could come to at this time, and also accommodate some of the measures that you have agreed to take as part of the early response into recovery. So when we did all of that, we got to a position with net savings of 2%, which got us to a 4% rate to rate or average rate increase. You'll see all of those things, and they start on page 227 onwards, and the actions that you've taken, and then the budget changes that we have proposed. They will be within Kiwi, within sort of 50 to 100k at this point in time. And then the next discussion item really for yourselves is, do you wish to soften that further by the potential use of reserves? And we have in the supplementary item, for those that have a copy of that, showing what happens with a bit of smoothing and depending on where you take from which reserve, how you may wish to, or how you could get to a 2% average rate increase. And there is a little bit of ups and downs depending on the different properties, and David will happily talk to those. Or indeed, if you wanted to get to 0, what that would look like. We've explained what happens. In essence, you're supplementing a revenue stream by the use of reserve. And if you do that, then that money in the reserve is no longer available in the future unless you decide to put it back in over a period of time, whether it's 1 year to 10 years. To assist you perhaps and maybe make it easier for you to make a decision today, we've suggested that you don't need to make the decision on that time period in today's meeting, but could put that, if you choose to do that, could put that into your development of the long-term plan, where you'll probably have a much better idea 6 months hence on what the shape of the economy is at that time. If you do go particularly low, of course, and we don't change levels of service through the long-term plan, you've got a gap that's going to emerge pretty soon that will need to be plugged if you want to retain levels of service. But I think those are really good conversations for you to have as part of the long-term plan development. And we've got a bit of a better idea about what the community really values, and also what impact we've seen through both economic and social wellbeing in particular. And obviously we'll have a bit of a better picture about what external funding we may or may not have been able to secure. The first point though is that should we have any surplus this year, we would look to use that money in the first instance to reduce anything for next year. So we will we're not anticipating, but should we find that we did have some surplus, David would refer to it as maximising the carry forward first, and I would call it utilising your retained earnings, the amount sitting there. So I'd be happy to pass over to David just to run through some of the specifics, and then if you've got any questions, we'd happily take.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Your Worship. The assumptions are listed in the report, and inflation is still with us. It may be a little bit less than what we were anticipating back in February, but we still have contracts where inflation will be a factor, so our costs will increase in the coming financial year. Interest is another factor that's changing and decreasing, going in the right direction. So some of the budget reductions that we've brought forward now are relating to a lower cost of interest and therefore a cost of debt that we can build into next year's budgets. And the carry forward reserves, as Kath has mentioned, we're trying to maximise what we have budgeted for and rated for this year, not spent, and making sure that's available next year. And that's it's listed in one of the tables towards the end, page 235. You'll see the range of carry forward things that we have put money aside for either this year or in previous years that are brought forward into next year's budget instead of rating again for them. So the capital program is another aspect that hasn't, I suppose, had a lot of debate other than the three particular items that were consulted on. But there's a total of over $25 million worth of capital expenditure work that's in the next year's plan, and that's one of the highest this council has seen. So that the big projects that are in there include the town centre, the skate park, memorial park, further strengthening work on the grandstand, and then there's a whole lot of other smaller things, the beginning of the pound. So the plan that you're adopting incorporates the council carrying on and delivering assets, new assets in the community. The roading program won't be completed in the current year, and some of that's COVID related, and the work that was planned is being added to next year's program, not substituted. So the program becomes bigger, and the subsidy is still available. So that's there's some background in terms of the budgets and the numbers, and as Kath said, we've come back to 4%, and what I've done with the supplementary paper is model what that 4% looks like compared to what the draft plan looked like when we had an average of 6%, and that 6% had a range of impacts on different properties because of where the funding is being spent. Roading increases dominated that first draft of the plan, and the rural ratepayers pay a larger share of the roading costs, and so the increase in roading impacted on rural rates being higher, increasing than urban rates. And compounding that was there was growth in the urban rating base, so there's more properties to pay rates in the urban area, which reduces the rates for everyone else. So we were getting 5.5% increases in urban and 6.5% to 7% increases in rural. Some of the costs that we've stripped out to get back to the 4% are in the district-wide type costs, not in the roading costs. So you'll see in the, I'll probably go to the first table, where there's a 4% average change. The urban is 3.1 and the rural is 6.8. So rural hasn't really got any benefit from the 2% reduction in rates, because the cost savings that we've brought through with those 2% are largely in district-wide costs, not in roading costs. And district-wide is paid for by everyone, but rural pays a smaller percentage of that, or a percentage based on the population in the rural area. So without any other changes, applying our rating policies and a 4% rates increase, the table there shows where Masterton mid-value residential property would be about a 3.3% increase. Riversdale and Castle Point increases at 7.8, Castle Point 9.4, so not a lot of decrease. And the two beach resorts are because the sewage costs on both of their sewage schemes and the recycling services that they're receiving, the costs of those are increasing. So the council asked for options around bringing it down to a 2% rate increase through the use of reserves, or a 0 rate increase. And the value that would need to be injected from reserves is 620,000 to achieve 2%, or 1.21 million to achieve a 0 change, or as close to 0 as I can get it. And again, I must emphasise that there's variations between properties, and when we talk the percentages, it's the average percentage we're talking about. So the second table then relates to a $620,000 draw from reserves to achieve an average 2% rate increase. I've applied that 620 across rate codes in the roading area, in the recreation centre costs, and economic development. So some of those are land value rates, some of them are capital value rates, and some of them are uniform charges. So I'm trying to spread the benefit of that extra 620,000 to reduce the rates across the board. And you'll see that the rural benefits significantly by the roading costs being subsidised by the reserves. So all of the urban properties are below 2%, the rural around 2.5%, and the two beach resorts at around 4%. So that's where we've landed with a 2% average rates change. The variation is across the properties on that split. And to achieve 100%, a 0% change, the average that I've come out with is a 0.2, with 0 in the urban area and 0.7 in the rural area. And as you see, that the dollar changes are very small for those that are increasing at all. And so it's very much at the margins. Tried to not have too many at a minus with rates going down, but trying to have as many with no change or very small change. So that that's the result of your decision, but your decision as to whether to bring 620 or 1.2 million out of reserves to offset this year's rates is a decision that impacts future years because of the draw on the funds, as Kath had said.
Okay, thank you very much, David and Kath. I think that's great. I really just want to acknowledge the work that the staff have put on through both reports on page 2. Some responded to the need for post-COVID world, and also built on what we've previously agreed in phase 1 and 2 the COVID influence. And so the supplementary report's there, so it's open for questions and then discussion. Councillor Johnson.
I'd like to move the recommendation that we receive the report and agree to 3 to apply 1.2 from reserves to achieve no change to rates.
I'll second that. So just a minute, because we've got 2 reports here. So you're doing a supplementary receives the report.
Yes, and agrees to 4.3, which is
okay. I'm just thinking for clarification, do you also want to move the same for 220? This is a supplementary report 220.
Yep.
And Tanya, you're right to second that. So on page 220, that council receives the report, approves the proposed budget changes, and then on the supplementary receives the supplementary report, and then agrees to 0.3. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. So discussion around that. What to speak to it?
I just think it's a fantastic report. I'd like to thank staff for the work that they've put into it. And it's really good to be presented with some options that are very clear. I think that by taking the 620k, it's not making enough difference. And I think at this time, given that also too, we can make a decision over what time period and when we start repaying the internal loan, that we've got a little bit of wriggle room there. And as your chief executives indicated, if there is any surplus, we can help pay towards that debt. But I think at the moment, we just need to soften as many blows as possible in our community and make this decision now.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm confident now that we will make decisions around prudent use of council's money with a different lens as a result of COVID, which will make it a lot easier for us to make some wise decisions around rate setting in the future as well. So thank you very much to the staff for preparing this. I think it'll be widely acknowledged by the community that this was the right decision. I'll leave it at that.
Decided I fully support this motion, and tough times require tough decisions, and we have no idea what lies ahead. I just wondered if the transport station, is there any way that we could levy some below that I mentioned last week? Did we look at that? And I suggest that we have some look at it, because we just cannot continue increasing rates all the time because get our roads forward.
We are looking at a revenue and financing policy review to feed into the long-term plan, and the review of how we collect rates from rural properties and those that impact on our roads is part of that review. So we can't levy rates on forestry trucks, on logs, but we can levy rates on properties that have trees.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Councillor Marlman.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I think it's time that we've got to be bold but not reckless, and these funds have been built up by the current generation, and it's the current situation throughout New Zealand is tough on. It's going to be hard on people. And I think by doing this, we're showing a real sign that we acknowledge that and that we are prepared to make a decision that will assist all the community. So I support it. And I also like to reiterate what Tina said and Beck said about the report. It's very good.
Yeah, I really would like to see us go for the 2%. I think that we're only just, perhaps we don't know, we're only just at the start of this COVID stuff, and we may need to be doing this for quite some time. And I think, David's done absolutely sterling work. I mean, it was 6%, he's got it back to 4% without any sort of subsidy. And, well, the team, the team, and I think that's great. And I just think that this is going to involve about 50% of the best reserve that we've got to target if we go to 0%. And I just think that that's not giving us that we may need to be doing this for quite some time, and we should go for 2%, because I think that's already a huge improvement of where we've started from 6%.
I actually don't agree with Chris for once. I was actually going to agree. I'm going to push the two. And the early response strategy there, I didn't actually support that. I mean, I like the Christmas delay and really worried about 2, 3, 4 years out from now. It's been last 7 years. Can't feel where any of the fields would flow. I was saying support 2, I don't feel support 3. It's very clear that he wants something discussion. Reaction too much too early to receive it.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson.
Just a question for David. The current inflation rate is 2.5%, so it's a 3% increase, essentially the 0% increase we see around.
Well, the inflation is on our costs, and we've got user fees and charges as well as rates. So, and not all of our costs are subject to inflation, and not all of them at the CPI. So some of them will be more, some will be less. Some will be market related. If there's more players in the market, when they go to tender, then competitiveness of a contract affects the pricing. So, yes, it's not a direct relationship between inflation and what our rates are, and then our rates impact on inflation as well. So our rates increases add to the economy's inflation rate.
So the short answer is actually yes. You're right. We've got a 2.2% local government cost index inflation running across this plan. That's our assumption that we've documented. So 0 is negative against what is happening, and 2 is still 0 if you want to take your logic. Yeah.
And David, and just going by that, I just want to compliment Chris. Sometimes when you're the first person to bring something that's going to be very popular, I think that's great. And I also agree with Chris and Graham. I agree with Graham's views about business and run. And it's still, I don't see it like a long term. So it's great.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Brian, and then Councillor Ryan.
Sure, David and all the team in terms of the report. I know that we see things. Not too sure I just got that. in the very short time that we asked for the figures. I'm just wondering, this is no criticism of you, but I'm just wondering if there were things that, if you had a bit more time to present, that you could vote with. We were having more people coming in to that area that might raise the income amounts. And so we've got a predicted figure. If we were doing the reduction of expenses and against the loan, we could also look at the income. So a possible income is in terms of rating land or trees in future years. So that income then starts to offset some of the road work that we are doing now. And so just in terms of what I was balancing between the 2 and 0% in terms of saying where Māori would want to be at, it would be fair to not just look at what expenses are being taken out because of that, because of taking from reserves, but it would be fair to think about what possible income in the future. And even today's meeting, I think there was a reduction from 350 to 100,000 in terms of youth. And so, you know, and I'm hesitating to, I'm going really on your goodwill now, David, because I reckon you've done the figures in your head already about the savings that we have there in terms of today's meeting. And so then the projection of what we have to dip into the reserves, I'm thinking is reduced, and there's an income stream coming in that would help me think about that a whole lot better as we're in the thinking about 2% rather than 0. Sorry that I'm giving you those questions. They're very unfair in terms of, you know, I'm asking to think on the run, but if there's any kind of indicator that you have, that would really help to settle my thinking about it.
I might defer to Kath in a minute. The growth in the rating base, we've anticipated that. We've anticipated the new houses that we know are under construction, that we hope to have the values captured by the end of June so that we can set rates on those new properties and then have more value in our system. And that's set at 1.8%. That's probably conservative. It might be 2%. The savings from not borrowing money for the Henley Lake consent or the Civic Centre project and not having the debt on our books isn't great in terms of year one of the plan. Most of the cost of that flows into future years when you're borrowing. So the savings that have come from today's making decisions don't impact a lot on our budget numbers.
Okay, Councillor Ryan, then Councillor Gear.
I'm sitting in the 2% camp as well, and it's mainly because I'd like to see a little bit of the reserves left in buckets because we don't really know what's coming. 2% I think is palatable.
Thank you, Councillor Gear.
I also agree with 2%. I think there's a lot more information to come and a lot more impacts on the community to come at this stage as well. So I would like to see 2% go through. I would like to see some reserve funds left for potential softening of the blow, should we say, in the future, and that could be used for a number of different projects. Well done, David, on going through and producing this report, and to Kath for going through and looking at everything line by line. I'd also like to see no council lunches going forward at all, because no one else gets their lunch provided for them at work, just quietly. So I just thought I'd raise that at this particular juncture as well. Thank you.
Very good point, Councillor Gear. I think everybody has contributed. Oh, sorry, Councillor Caffell. You're that quiet down there in the corner.
Just it's interesting to listen to the discussion. I'm going to support the I'm going to support the motion on the basis that when we had discussions on this, we've been really keen to try and bring rural and urban together as much as we can on our decrease, if you like, and I think that David has shown that we can do that. And when you look at the charts, the rural are very much in line with urban, and as we go 2 to 3, and that's a real factor to me, because I think rural people have been making very hard, and so yes, I'm voting for the motion.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Tito, sorry.
My lucky last?
Yeah, you're lucky.
Here we go.
Well, I am actually.
Oh, yeah,
It's
it's really hard yet to see what the impacts are going to be in the future, and we need to be pretty mindful of what's in the reserves, because we can't even, if there is another outbreak, you know, if there is another community transmission case and this region goes into lockdown, are we in a position to help at the scale that we did before? I really think we need to think about that too, is that scenario. Yeah, so it's just something that I'd like to raise. I'm just going to be looking at where the council is going to be directed in regards to the rates increase. I know there are people out there currently wondering how they're going to pay their mortgage, let alone their rates. So there's lots of things going on at the moment for people out there, and they're hurting, and we'll get to see the full impact of it yet.
Kia ora, thank you, Tito. So, did you want to reply? You know, okay. So, thank you, everybody. That was an interesting discussion. It's not an easy one, but I support the 2% for the reasons that have been discussed around here. We're very, very early days, and we don't know what's around the corner. And I suspect there will be more that will bite us in the backside in 6 months, a year's time. So, and I think really, really well done to the staff on the work that has been done here. And I feel quite comfortable around with the 2%, and really pleased that we're still able to put our roading program ahead. It's our biggest area of expenditure. It's important infrastructure, and as David has already indicated, the work that can't be done this year will be added on to what the program is next year. So we still have to provide the infrastructure services. We still have to provide a buffer for our community around the social and economic well-being, cultural environment as well. And this is an important time to do that. So I'm really comfortable at the 2%. But anyway, the motion has been moved and seconded. So if there's nothing else and everybody's had a chance to speak, I will put the motion. So all those, and we're all clear what the motion is, the 2 on page 220. Oh, it's up there. Thank you, Harry. You're 10 steps ahead of me. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. I'll do 1, 2, and 3, and I might do 4 separately. Are you happy with that? Yes. And Tina, you happy with that? Okay, so I'll put the motion that council receives the report, approves the proposed budget changes in this report on page 220, and receives the supplementary information. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? The motion is carried. Now the last one, agrees to apply 1.2 from reserves to achieve no change. That is 0% as an average to rates, and to consider whether council will repay the funds to the reserve as part of the development of the long-term plan. I will put that motion, and I'll ask that those that are in agreement please raise their right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, motion fails.
Oh, no, you have to, someone might abstain, so you have to do the other bit.
Oh, I didn't do the other bit, sorry. Yeah, against the, your hand up, yeah. Sorry, that was my fault. I did the for, but I didn't do the against. So the motion is lost on number 4. So do you want to move the motion, Councillor Chris? That the same motion, but it is at 2%, seconded by Councillor Gear. So that's been moved and seconded. And I will put the motion. All those in favour of the 2%, please raise your right hand. Those against, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, everybody. So now we will move in to public excluded. I don't even know.
Just put the motion to move in.
Okay. So I'm just gonna, you can move the motion to go into public excluded. Okay, Sandy, you're happy to second? Sandy seconded. All those in favour to go into public excluded, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, the motion is carried. And David had a very quick question.
Oh, no, I wondered with the latest rate. How many were in arrears?
We got that report for the audit and risk.
Was the last day of rates.
Have you had an indication since then? We'll wait till the Times Age guy leaves.
Just wants to wait.
Eh?